What is up, everybody, and welcome to the All-NBA Show, powered by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet at FanDuel.com/All-NBA. I'm your host, Adam Mares. Tim Legler has the day off again. That slacker, never working that leg. But I brought in my good friend, Kevin O'Connor from Yahoo and the Kevin O'Connor Show. Very excited to talk some Nuggets and MVP. KOC, how you doing, brother?
I'm doing awesome, Adam. Excited to be doing this with you. Had you on my show earlier this year. We had a great conversation. Things have changed for Denver, so I'm looking forward to catching up on everything that's happened since the slow start.
I was a little doom and gloom on them, a little low on them as recently as about a month ago, but they've turned it around. And you know how this is. I don't know if you run into this. Sometimes you plan a show, and I wrote you earlier in the week, hey, I want to come on and talk Nuggets. Nuggets are on a run. And they had the game last night, and you're like, please just don't go against the narrative. Don't I want to talk about how the Nuggets are on the upswing and they're looking good. Don't blow it. And of course they didn't. It was a dominant performance, man. So we'll get into that. We're going to start with some layup lines, though, as we always do, kind of get some headline topics in here. And the first one, I think everybody knows your takes well enough. I say everybody that follows basketball. You're a Wemby guy. He went to Paris. He goes a homecoming of sorts last night to take on the Pacers. And he put on a show. Like, that was one of his better games of the whole year. He had multiple sequences in that game that were just like the entire repertoire on display. What do you take away from him going off in his home country of France?
Did you see the self lob that he had off the backboard in the fourth quarter? Like, that was kind of like the cherry on top of what was just an absolutely magnificent performance. I feel like with Victor, it's either something creative that you haven't seen before, or if he does something amazing on offense, just rewind 20 seconds and he probably did something amazing on defense. And that's what it was like time and time again in that game, where it's like, he blocks a shot on defense, end of the third quarter. Then he's like bringing the ball up the floor himself, drawing multiple defenders, assists. Then that was a 90-second stretch, I think, with 3 blocks, ended with the goaltend. He had 2 assists. He finished a lob, end of the third quarter. I mean, that stretch was just, I thought it completely reflected who he is in terms of almost all of his highlight moments. There's also one that happened right before it on the defensive end of the floor.
Somebody posted the full sequence. You said 90 seconds. It might have been more than that. It was like 2.5 minutes where he makes like 12 great plays in a row, and it was the vision, right? Like, we all wonder where Victor Wembanyama is going, but when you see, I always say, like, players' best stints or games or moments, that shows you where it's headed. And with him, you see that and you go, if this is where that's headed, that's dominant 3-minute stretches where you can't score on him, and he's doing something crazy. And to your point, that lob, it wasn't, some guys do the lob, it's showboaty, it's this or that. That was a functional move to get the ball back and score. And it was just like, man, the guy feels it.
I think there's something to it for him, just like with the floater 3. I know he doesn't do the floater 3 as much as, like, obviously LaMelo Ball, who has over 50 attempts doing it over the season, but there's something to it for a guy with his size and his length. Like, 3-point line, it's kind of like floater for somebody who's allegedly 7'4", might actually be taller than that. And then the lob to himself off the backboard, there was a point in doing it. Like you said, Adam, it wasn't just for the highlight reel. It wasn't sloppy. It's that he was at an angle where he had nothing, and that was something that he was able to create for himself. And I wonder if we'll see more of that from him in the years to come, because it felt like something that, like, he can kind of exploit at his size.
It'd be hilarious if it became a go-to move or something, but you are right, because the way he threw it off the backboard was like he threw it so it would bounce high, and he's like, well, I'm the only one that can reach up here, so I'll go ahead and get it.
Exactly. Nobody else had a chance at it. Nobody.
Yeah. You know what's funny, man? Kobe scores 60 in his last game, and part of me was like, of course, because these special players, these games that don't really mean anything other than the novelty, they always are ready for it because there's a showmanship to it, but there's also, like, I just think greatness understands the moment. And Wemby going to Paris and then dropping the game that he had, 30 points, 11 rebounds, 6 assists, 5 blocks, 1 steal, 13 of 21. Like, you just knew he was going to do it because he is a special player, and it was a special, just, aura moment. And I don't know. Do you think these things mean anything? They always mean something to me.
I think so. I think with him, it's almost not a big surprise. Like you said, it feels like it was kind of like destined for him, like for
Yeah,
Kobe to have the game that he did in his final performance, for his final game in the NBA. And, like I talked to Larry Nance about that this week, actually, because I had Larry Nance on my
right.
podcast and he was in that last game. I joked with Larry. I was like, how did it feel? You guys combined for 68 points. And he just said like everybody on that bench, like was just thinking, this is actually going to happen. Like there's a sense of surprise, but also a sense of, oh, wait a minute, it's Kobe. And with Victor, obviously, we're just at the beginning of his story. But, the fact, France, they didn't win gold in the Olympics, but Victor
That's
out
true.
there still having some good moments aside from his shot not falling. And then his homecoming now. I think the NBA should have San Antonio play in France every year. Like,
Honestly, they
why would
really
you not send
should.
it back every year, right?
Yeah. And it was cool. The court was cool. It just like I like these special moments. I don't like them
Oh,
do
yeah.
it too much, but I agree with you. San Antonio should go every single year. I think they Nuggets should go to Serbia for a game, but I know the money doesn't always make
Mm-hmm.
sense there. Um, let's keep it moving here. Mavs go get a win last night over the Thunder. They're 3-1 on the year. No Luka in this one, but 3-1 against OKC. OKC hasn't lost a lot this season, but they've lost 3 times now to Dallas. They lost to them last year in the playoffs. Is this something or nothing?
So Chet played in none of those games. Hartenstein missed 3 of them, and in
Yeah.
the one that he did play, they won by over 10. And Luca played in that one for Dallas. So I'd say it's nothing if OKC's healthy, but it's something if they're not. And if they're not, is definitely a concern because Chet's going to come back at some point, but he had a serious leg fracture and he hasn't proven that he can stay durable. Hartenstein has a calf injury right now. And if you remember a year ago with the Knicks, he was dealing with an Achilles injury throughout the entire season.
Mm.
So I wonder if this calf thing is actually related to that Achilles thing that he was dealing with all of last year with New York. And if that's the case, if he's missing time or if he's limited, that is concerning. So I'd lean towards it is something overall for OKC in terms of their front court health, but nothing in terms of their key guys have missed some time against Dallas. And this would also be concerning against Denver as well. You need Hartenstein in a
Right.
series against Jokic, or like he's just going to pound you to hell and you're going to lose. So I think it's something there for OKC. And I can't help but wonder if, all the talk about, oh, should they trade for Cam Johnson and all that? Maybe they should actually be trading for another big.
Mm. The calf strain thing is interesting. Luka's been dealing with it for several years. Hartenstein now, Aaron Gordon in Denver is dealing with it now. And it's one of those things that it's like hamstrings where you think it's good, but then it comes back and you almost can never know when you're fully healed from it. And that's why those ones are scary to me. So the fact that he's dealing with it now for a second year, it's the same with Luka, by the way. Like, oh, he'll come back. It's like, yeah, but that injury also keeps coming back. And so it'll always be in the back of at least my mind. But I do think this is something. I don't think it's something big for all the points you just laid out that these regular season games are a little goofy in terms of who's available. But I do think there's something too. When a team knocks you out of a playoffs, that team then has a mark on them. Like, okay, we have to get them back. We have to do it. And when you go into a regular season, doesn't matter who's healthy. That's still a game that it's like, hey, we just want the psychological edge. You don't ever want to go into a postseason with a team, especially if you're going to win 65 plus games like Oklahoma City is set to do. You don't want to go into a playoffs where it's like, yeah, but that team beat us. They have our number. So it's a small thing, but I do think there's a psychological edge that comes with these regular season matchups. At least I want to believe that because I want to believe the regular season matters, and it might not.
Well, I mean, especially like Dallas doesn't have Luka for these 2 games they lost over the past week. So I mean, like
Right.
everything I said about they didn't have Ched and Isaiah
Right.
Hartenstein, missed 3 of the 4 games. Well, they
Right.
didn't have Luka for these 2 games this week. So I mean, Dallas fans have like a much stronger argument. Like, well, what about when we get Luka back? So I do think you're right, Adam, that there could be a psychological aspect here. But more than anything else, I mean, one of the reasons why they lost that series last year was just the lack of size. They just got
Right.
killed. And that was with Chet last year, and who knows what he'll look like when he comes back this year. So I just wonder, should OKC be trying to flip like Usman Jang, who makes $5 million, and get another big, go get Davon Sharp from the Nets or Walker Kessler from the Utah, who'd be more expensive, but just somebody as support. Because if you lose again in the playoffs because Chet goes down or Hartenstein goes down, and you didn't make a trade when you're sitting on this pile of draft picks, like I think you're going to regret that 2 years in a row. Last year I got it, but if you don't do it this year, I don't know, man. Like maybe you're
No.
just being a little too patient with this core.
The future is truly bright for Oklahoma City, but at the same time, to your point, just the windows are too. You never know what's happening in the NBA. You can never predict around the corner, and they certainly have what it takes to win this year. So I'm with you on that one. Anthony Davis, the Lakers get a win last night over the Boston Celtics. Actually, a very nice win, 117-96. Dominated really from start to finish. Won 3 of the 4 quarters. We're up big at halftime. It's a very nice win. And after the game, LeBron James and Anthony Davis, I think they're just trying to put pressure on the front office because they do this every year this time, right? Where they start to, if we made a deal. But he says he thinks they're 1 or 2 pieces away, basically saying a trade will get us to where we're true contenders. Their record is better than I think people would think, 24-18, like a sneaky good record. Is he right that they're just 1 trade away?
There's nothing they can do to become the favorites, but
Yeah.
I think that they are probably 2 trades away, 2 acquisitions away from at least having a chance. You're not going to beat OKC without improving your roster. You're not going to beat even Denver. Never mind if you make it into the finals against the Celtics or the Cavs or whoever it might be. The Lakers do need to make some changes, and I think they should. I think it's worth the investment considering, LeBron and AD are still capable of being top 10 guys, both of them. And the supporting cast, like Dorian Finney-Smith is a very good 3-and-D guy. Austin Reeves has made great progress. They have good guys on this roster that are supporting the best players. Just they're missing a little bit. Like they need another guard who's better than Gabe Vincent or Shake Milton. They need another backup big or a big that can play alongside AD because I think AD's right. What he said in that interview with Shams, when AD's playing the 4, it's what allows him to be that like big jumbo size wing defender helping over. It proves paint protection when he's down there with another big and it's not just all on him. So I think to his point for this roster construct for the Lakers, they should be looking for another big. The problem is like who? I think Valanciunas is not going to be the right guy for that team. I don't think like you're making a deal with the Bulls for Vooch. That's not going to solve all of your issues. So I'm not sure who the guy is unless they're going to overspend for Walker Kessler for the rim protection and the rebounding that you would add and the lob threat as well.
Is Anthony Davis just scared of Nikola Jokic? Do they need it against other players? Is this just hey man, 2 years in a row I got sunned. I got to have a guy in there guarding him so I don't take the ball.
I mean, I think AD is getting sunned no matter what by Jokic because everybody does. That's just what Jokic. That's why he's one of the 10 or so greatest players in the history of basketball. But with AD, I think it's more about just the overall defense. Their defense, despite having him, has not been great this season. It's had little stretches where it's been great, but having another 5, a true 5 next to AD is what I think would help their overall rim protection. So I think AD's right there, but it is probably in part, he doesn't want to be tasked with defending Jokic for, 4 games, maybe only 4 to 7.
Also, shots fired at Jackson Hayes, man. No faith in Jackson Hayes. Last one here. Last one here for our layup lines. The starters were announced for the All-Star game. Your Eastern Conference is Giannis, Jalen Brunson, Donovan Mitchell, Jason Tatum, and Karl Anthony Towns. So just start in the East here. Does this look like the right list to you, or do you see somebody that you think deserve to be up there?
I would have liked to have seen LaMelo start. It's the All-Star game. It's fun. He led in fan vote, 3rd in player vote. Only 3 votes as a starter by media members. Only 3? I mean, I understand why he didn't get selected by media. Yeah, but I was only one of the 3.
Yeah. Who is it over? Jalen Brunson, I assume.
Yeah, it was over Brunson.
Yeah.
I voted a little early. Maybe I would have done it differently if I voted on the last day, but I don't know. I think LaMelo's fun, and I hope he makes the team. I wouldn't say he's a snub yet until he doesn't make it, but I think he should be in the All-Star game. He's been great this year for Charlotte.
I think he will make the All-Star game, but just not being a starter. Don't you think? Or do you think this is like a true bubble scenario for him? I haven't gone through my list, so I don't know.
I mean, think the coaches are selecting the reserves, and then the commissioner's office selects the replacements. I would expect that Adam Silver would select LaMelo Ball, but the coaches, I'm not sure about the coaches selecting them.
Oh, that'll be interesting to watch. If we go to the Western Conference, you got Steph Curry, Kevin Durant, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, LeBron James, Nikola Jokic. Did they get this one right?
I would have had Wemby start over KD. I mean, KD is still obviously excellent offensively, but Victor's the defensive player of the year, and he's stellar offensively as well. KD does not look like the same guy defensively for Phoenix this year. So I would have selected Wemby, but I don't have big problems and KD getting the nod there. He's Kevin Durant. He's still having a great season individually.
You love the Gen Zs. You're a champion of the Gen Zs, LaMelo and Wemby. This is your quarter.
I guess I am. I guess I am.
Quarter, man.
I guess I am. I mean, I mean, I know Wemby's going to make it as a reserve. I just hope LaMelo gets that opportunity. I mean, you have the fans voting him by far number one. He's having an excellent season for Charlotte. He's one of the only reasons why they're worth watching at all. And I understand like his efficiency isn't at the same level of some of those other guards, but the fun factor is significant. He is still an excellent player as well. He's an innovative player. And he's very highly productive. He just doesn't have the supporting cast for the Hornets. They stink overall. Yeah, it's not necessarily LaMelo's fault.
He would be fun in the All-Star game too, actually. And I think we will get it this year, but I am kind of curious to see how he approaches it and what it looks like. All right, let's take our first break. On the other side, we're going long today on the Nuggets. I'm excited because there's a lot of angles to talk about on this Nuggets team. Westbrook, Jokic's season, Jamal Murray, and I want to know if KOC is buying them back as title contenders. We'll do that on the other side. First, NFL playoffs are here. From big upsets to game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs are better with FanDuel because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's 200 in bonus bets, win or lose. The FanDuel app gives you everything you need for live bets, same-game parlays, and so much more. Plus, when you win, you'll get paid instantly. Just visit FanDuel.com/AllNBA to join today and get started with 200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com/ALLNBA. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Must be 21 or older, present in select states. If Kansas in affiliation with Kansas Star Casino or 18 plus and present in DC. First online real money wager only. $5 first deposit required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets which expire 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit fanduel.com/RG. Call 1-888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org/chat in Connecticut or visit mdgamblinghelp.org in Maryland. Hope is here. Visit gamblinghelplinema.org and call 800-327-5050 for 24/7 support in Massachusetts, or call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY in New York. Also want to tell you guys about Shady Rays. Get ready for the season ahead with Shady Rays. The quality shades built to last. Our friends at Shady Rays have you covered with premium polarized shades that won't break the bank. Shady Rays is an independent sunglass company. You know I like that. Offering a world-class product rated 5 stars by over 300,000 people. Their shades have durable frames and crystal clear optics, making them the perfect choice for all outdoor adventures. They have hundreds of options to choose from, so you're bound to find the perfect pair to match your style, and they probably have some shades in your favorite team's colors. Exclusively for our listeners, Shady Rays is giving away their best deal of the season. Head to shadyrays.com and use our code AC35 for 35% off polarized sunglasses. Try for yourself the shades rated 5 stars by over 300,000 people. All right, we're back here with Kevin O'Connor from Yahoo, from the Kevin O'Connor Show. Make sure you subscribe to that show. Always a fantastic one. Did have Larry Nance Jr. on, who, by the way, he's such a great interview, man. And he, maybe pertinent to the conversation, he has one of my favorite stories of all time in which he says, I played with LeBron James, but the game Jokic had against the New Orleans Pelicans was the greatest single basketball game he's ever watched a person play. I always love when random guys, and I call him random because, you know, he was in that game, but he's not like a superstar or whatever, gets in front of a mic and says, hey, you guys don't remember this game, but I watched Jokic play a perfect basketball game, more perfect than anything I've ever seen from LeBron James. Do you remember this story?
No, I don't remember this story. I should have asked him about it. I wish I knew ahead of time. I should have consulted you, Adam.
He's a big Jokic guy, man. I love guys. I mean, you know me, I'm easy. I love players when they're Jokic guys. He's a Jokic guy. I'm a Jokic guy.
Simple.
I don't know if you do this.
Of course you are. I do know this. You are the Jokic guy.
The Jokic guy, and it's not just because of last night when he put up one of the great individual box scores of all time, 35 points, 22 rebounds, 17 assists, 2 blocks and a steal for good measure, 12 of 19. Andy hit a 66-foot heave. He did everything in this game. Um, let's just stick with this game, man. The Nuggets get a dominant win. They kind of blow it in the fourth quarter. I don't know. When these types of things happen, Denver's up 25 points. It ends up getting down to, I think, 4 before Denver put it away. How do you evaluate Denver's performance? Is this more the 25-point blowout to you, or did you feel like this was a close game?
It was more the 25-point blowout. I felt like sometimes those fourth quarter comes backs, I know they can be successful, but a lot of the times teams naturally let up in those
Mm-hmm.
quarters. So I look at it more of a blowout, especially after that heave into the third quarter. But I don't know. I feel like this is just a continuation, Adam, of what we've seen since, early mid-December, since that
Yep.
turnaround when they're 11-10. It's, against Sabonis, it was, Charizard, Charmander type of stuff, with
Yeah.
Jokic just looking like the far superior advanced version to Sabonis. No disrespect to him, he's a very good player, but Jokic is just on an absolutely another level. There's nothing you can do to this guy. And overall, this Denver team over this past month and a half, really, I forget the exact date I had you on my podcast, but it's pretty close to like that turnaround on December 8th. And it's just more of the same. The connection with Russ. Like Russ had a play where he had an open three and he bricked it. Jokic got the offensive board, put it back. But then, minutes later or a quarter later, Russ had an open 3-pointer, drives into the paint, draws multiple defenders, and dumps it off to Jokic. And it was one of those like telepathic plays
Yep.
that Jokic had talked about the game prior, after the game, how they just seemed to always be able to read each other's mind. And you have Murray getting better. The bench is taking shape with Peyton Watson and Aaron Gordon together. Granted, Gordon didn't finish the game. Did finish the first half, coming
Right.
back in the second half. But, Gordon's okay, right? That was not just nothing.
Yeah,
Nothing
he
happened,
talked in
right?
the locker room and said he was fine. So he talked to media
Okay.
afterwards, which usually is a good sign.
Okay. So that's a good thing. But ultimately, though, it just felt like a continuation of this team that has totally taken shape. Even Julian Strother
Yeah.
playing way better off the bench. So I think with Denver, I looked up the stats this morning. Since December 8th, number 2 net rating in the NBA behind OKC, number 1 offensive
Wow.
rating since December 8th. And with Jokic on the floor, 126.2 offensive rating, 107.7 defensive rating, just absolute pure dominance on the floor. So I think with Denver, they're back. They look like finals contenders to me. And I think maybe make one move if they can. But this
Okay.
roster is pretty close to complete right now.
I want to get back to that one move here in a little bit. I want to talk about why Denver has turned around, and I'm going to throw you some things, and you can quantify, how important these things have been. But let's just start with Jokic, 3-time MVP. He's having his best season ever, and I don't think that's controversial at all. I actually think it's comfortably his best season ever. 30 points a game, 13 and a half rebounds, 10 assists. So he's averaging a triple-double. The second best effective field goal percentage of his career. So it's not like he's dropped off in efficiency, and he's shooting 48% from 3 on 4.3 attempts. Highest box plus minus ever, highest PER ever. Not for himself, for any player ever. I think number one place you start when you say, well, we saw Denver last year go down in 7 games to Minnesota. What's different? I'll start with Jokic is better. He was great last year, but he's better this year. And I think better because he is more comfortable being dominant. This is a 5-year process between where he just likes the team game and sometimes he's not aggressive enough. So I think now he almost enjoys being aggressive. There's games this year where he's shooting 25 plus times, stretches of it. And I just think that he enjoys being a dominant individual force in ways he never has before.
I mean, we saw him years ago as the guy who would go, shoot 4 times, 0
Yep.
times, and he would just pass, 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 and be, deferential in those games. This is, as you said, a guy that clearly enjoys being that scorer when he needs to. And I think that's what makes it so impressive. I know, like, the shooting nearly 50% from 3 still in the middle of January. I mean,
Yeah.
like, you just wonder if this is at least going to cool down at some point. But it doesn't seem so for a guy with just, feathery, soft, elite touch like he has. But ultimately, I do think this is the best version of Jokic. And I think it's also interesting that he recognizes that it's the best version of Jokic. He said after last
Yes.
night's games, I'm paraphrasing here, but he's like, I think I'm playing better than I ever have. The shots are going in and all that. Like, he recognizes what he is and he recognizes what he can become. And that's in part because by necessity, Denver gets off to a really slow start. He needs to step up the scoring to compensate for Murray, who got off to a slow start. And I think he's seeing what he's capable of. And that's all-time level production. Like, this is the guy we're seeing right now is one of the 4 or 5 greatest players in the history of basketball at his peak right now. So I think he has a recognition of what he's capable of, and the rest of the roster taking shape around him as he's embracing that is largely the number one reason why this team has turned it around. Number one. I mean, and like that's also like him doing that. A side effect is Russ cutting like triple the amount of times he has over many seasons in his career, embracing that role. It's all of it just is because like it's because of what Jokic is. It all is a byproduct of him figuring this out.
It really is. And I want to get back to the Westbrook part of this here in just a second, but there's a slow evolution that's happened with Jokic that I don't think most people really know about. I've never really talked about it. You know, when Paul Millsap came over, Jokic was playing second fiddle, and Paul Millsap had to go to him, and Jokic was like, well, you're a 4-time All-Star. He's like, yeah, but you're better than me. Like, this is your team. And it's almost like he had to tell Paul Millsap, or Paul Millsap had to tell him that. And there's been slow acceptance, I think, of Jokic over the time about him becoming, you know, the best player. But there was a story last year. Vic Lombardi, who's a local radio and television legend here, he has a shirt on that said, Jokic is the greatest basketball player in the world. And he tells a story about how Jokic got into an elevator with him, and Jokic looks at his shirt and he tells him, you're not wrong, brother. And that's like an acceptance that I don't think Jokic wouldn't have said those things in 2021 even. But it's like over time, he's accepted these things. And now I look at it, it's even further to where I love that he loves many men from 50 Cent, because the song really is like, I'm trying to take what's mine. This is mine. And I just love this idea of Jokic's fully evolved from like the I can't accept it, the reluctant leader and reluctant superstar to everyone's trying to come get me, but none of them can. I'm better than everybody. I'm the baddest dude. And he's playing. That's what's different about him now is he's playing like a guy that wants everyone to know he's better than them.
And he's showing it every single night. I mean, I think like with Jokic, like, you know, we'll talk about MVP stuff later as well, but part of it is like, it's just become normal for Jokic to have like almost 30, 20 and 20 last night, almost 30, 20 and 20, where it's like, okay, this is normal stuff from Jokic because he does it all the time. It's just like, this is normal. It shouldn't be normal though. And I like, you have to remind yourself as basketball fans to understand, like, you cannot take this for granted. You can't let this become normal. You need to pinch yourself and realize, wait a minute, I'm watching one of the historic players in the history of sports right now. This is not normal. And so I think it's cool though. Like, and that's a great story with Lombardi and the elevator, because I think that it does reflect Jokic accepting and learning who he is. Because I remember when I interviewed him, this was like 2017, 2018. I forget the year that I wrote a story about Jokic. It was like Jokic and the Funky Bunch was the headline for it. And I interviewed Jokic. It was probably one of the last like long form interviews Jokic did with American media. I know he has a Serbian friends. Yeah, and like this was early. And this is before he's like, I don't want to do anything except with my Serbian buddies. But but Jokic was like very shy about who he was becoming at that time. He's like, oh, I don't know. It just comes natural for me. I you know, it's like he didn't almost fully understand it yet. Like Michael Malone, when I interviewed him at the time, he understood it. And I think there's a quote in the story at the time where he's like, I'm not even sure Jokic realizes how great he is already. Right. Something along those lines. But Jokic does now. And sometimes when you have self-awareness in life and understand, this is a general life thing, sometimes when you understand your strengths and weaknesses, you become that better version of that. And I think Jokic is understanding his strengths, and those are only getting stronger because of that self-awareness.
It's a great way to put it, because I honestly think it's like a necessary acceptance to be able to come the next level of, no, I am this thing. I am the special. And it's not from a place of arrogance. It's a place of drive. It's almost like he has the responsibility to, I am the best player. It would be a shame if I didn't dominate every single night. And that's what he's doing right now. And 5 straight triple doubles. The previous four, last game he played in the fourth quarter. That's why the numbers got absurd. But you almost go back and look and say he didn't play in the fourth quarter of the previous 4 games, had a triple-double in all of them. So those numbers actually were leaving out 1/4 of time he could have been on the court. We could have seen 5 straight 30, 20, 10 games, from him if he plays the fourth quarter. He's at a level right now that I think is insane. So that's number one. The Nuggets, number one, Jokic is better than ever. Number two, I think there's a new vision for this team. And part of why I think Denver, people have been skeptical of them, and even there's a slow adoption of the Nuggets and the slow coming to like, hey, let's notice what's going on here, is that they're not going to win. If they win this year, they're not going to do it the way they did in 2023. It was Jokic, Murray, and then everybody around it. I think it is now a two-headed monster of Murray and Russell Westbrook. And I think Murray is going to have to continue ascending. He's been getting better over the last 2 months. They're going to need him to be even higher, come playoff time. But right now, the Nuggets have found a perfect synergy, in my opinion, of Westbrook dominating the two-man game with Jokic and Murray dominating the two-man game. And sometimes it's game by game, but sometimes it's quarter by quarter, where it's like, man, Russ and Jokic really had it going, and then all of a sudden Murray and Jokic really had it going. And I think that's the final form of this team now, is not the Murray-Jokic two-man game, but the Russ-Jokic, Murray-Jokic, those two pairings of two-man game is the final form of this. What do you think?
I think that's spot on. I mean, it just feel like you said, in the past, it was Jokic Murray, always end game situations. And now for Denver with Russell Westbrook and MPJ sometimes too, you have that other option in those two-man games. And with Russ and Jokic, the chemistry has just improved constantly throughout the season. I think you might have tweeted it out at some point during the season, but it's like, it's not that it's like some hot stretch. It's been steady improvement. It follows a trend with how much better they've gotten together, which I think adds to the confidence that this is very real with what they're doing together. And I think all the advanced numbers back it up with how high of efficiency their two-man game stuff is. And I think more than anything else, it's the variety that Denver offense now has with Russ. And, credit to him. I mean, I think it's funny sometimes he talks about, like, he has these quotes where he's like, well, Denver lets me be me. They let me be the guy I've been my whole career. I'm like, do they? No, you're not the guy you have been your whole career. You're something different. You're a new and amazing version of yourself right now. Like, I almost wish he would say the opposite. Like, I've transformed myself, and I've extended my career successfully, because he's something different with, of course, aspects of the old Russ. But I'm loving this version of Russell Westbrook. Am I right about that?
I don't know. So I was going to debate you on it. I was going to kind of go back and forth, because I think there is something to, here's my belief. Because you and I, we talk, we had different opinions about the Russ thing coming in. And I was initially very concerned because Russ has gone some places, and it hasn't worked out. But I sit and think about it, and this was my theory. Jokic has every basketball skill on offense, every single one, and he can play every style. I think you could drop him on literally every great team that's ever played in the role, and he would just be like, oh, okay, I have to be that guy. I'll be that guy. So my thought was, Russ has a couple elite skills, and Jokic can mold his game around those. So he'll just, okay, you take that part of the load. I'll take this part. And that's more or less how this is played out. So when you say Westbrook has changed his game, he's still high usage. The ball's in his hand. He's still running pick and roll. He's still doing crazy drop-offs. The one area he's changed is that he's cutting harder. But my theory on cutting harder is, one, Denver plays a style where the offense is constantly in motion. It's not like you're standing in the corner, set, now cut. It's everything's moving and you're finding lanes. And two, more players would cut if they were rewarded every time they cut. In Denver, you're always rewarded. So why wouldn't you cut? You're going to get a basket, or you're going to open up something for somebody else. So part of me wonders, like, I don't want to take away credit from what I think is happening here, which is this team sees something he was good at doing in small doses, but now he does it in large doses because it's so effective.
I think that's fair. It's a good way of looking at it. So, I mean, really, it's a little bit of both. It's a little bit of both with Russ. Like, he's doing some of the stuff that they tried to take away from him in with the Lakers and the Clippers.
Yeah.
But he's also adapting to this generational talent and Jokic. And why would you not? You'd have to be a real idiot not to cut to the basket, sharing the floor with this guy who always finds you and always rewards you with good, easy shot opportunities. So I do think it's a little bit of both. But really, credit to Russ, though. Like, I was wrong. I I thought it was a horrible offseason signing. I thought it was a massive mistake. Beginning of the season when it looked really bad, I was like, oh, well, here we go again. And it's worked out big time. And I think that's a credit to Russ for finding his lane in Denver. Credit to him for adapting, but also a credit to Jokic, a credit to the Nuggets for saying, no, we can make this work with this roster. And I think you were spot on about it too, Adam. You said it this offseason. You said Russ brings something different with his speed and downhill attacking and the aggression and that flavor of offense in the half court was something that Jokic really had never played with before. So you were 100% right about what it could be. And we're seeing exactly that happen right now. And it's just, I mean, ultimately it's just going to be a matter of sustaining it come postseason time. That's going to be really the only final hurdle for Russ in this situation. But I feel really good about it being a real thing during the regular season right now. And I see no reason why it wouldn't work with a guy like Jokic.
It's the great thing about following Jokic is you can ask yourself, what's the greatest outcome? At least on the offensive end, what's the greatest outcome? And more often than not, it hits. It's why my favorite, like there was a lot of things people got wrong, 10 years ago about Jokic when we started projecting forward. But the number one thing people said that they got dead wrong, that no one will ever have to be accountable for, was he's hard to build around. You have to have the exact right types of players. It's like, no, it's not true. Literally every player is good next to us. It's the funniest thing people kind of missed on. I want to test it with Ben Simmons. I want to test it to its zenith and be like, hey, Zion, come over here. We're going to get the best Zion, best Ben Simmons.
I mean, if you're Ben Simmons, you're entering free agent this year, you're probably going to be a minimum contract guy.
Yeah.
Denver's number one on your list.
Go make money, man.
Yeah, like Denver has to be number one for
Bruce
any
Brown
of those
made $40
players.
million. Go to Denver. You're going to get a good deal out of it. Almost certainly.
If he gets bought out, I know it's complicated with the CBA and all that, but if he were to get bought out, I wish Denver had a pathway to go get him back. I miss that version of Bruce Brown. I miss it.
Man. I think he misses it too. Like that guy really loved being in Denver. Like he embraced he became a cowboy. He really liked it out here. What's your confidence level though? So what real question with Russ is playoffs. Like in a playoffs, teams are going to do this or that. They're already not guarding him on the perimeter. This is part of why I have confidence is it's not like they're going to make crazy adjustments. They're already ignoring him outside, but Jokic allows for him to get inside it comfortably. What's your level of concern that when the playoffs come, it's going to be a different beast?
A little bit less so than I was in his past stops. And that's because of the Jokic, play that we talked a little bit about earlier, where it's like Russ was wide open in that second half, drives into a wide open paint with nobody defending him, and he just dumps it off to Jokic. And that's not an option he really had in these different situations where he was being ignored. And I also think Russ, to his credit, each year he's shown a bit more willingness to not just jack up shots all the time.
Great
and
point.
That got better last year with the Clippers. And I'm sure this is probably what the Nuggets saw in him. He did cut more than ever with the Clippers last year. He showed a willingness to pass up some of those shots more than ever with the Clippers. And even though it didn't end well, I'm sure some of those positive signs are what they observed. So yes, there's concern, but like you said, Adam, they're already facing it. They're already getting a full regular season's worth of having to adapt to that. And with Jokic being able to, shoot the hell out of it the way he does, if Russ needs to be your guy, hanging around the dunker spot and cutting and moving and setting some screens and whatnot, they can pull out that card if they need to. But yeah, ultimately, I think my only concern with Russ is sometimes is just, going crazy and taking unwarranted shots, but that's become far less of a concern with Denver this year than some past years.
His turnovers, I think, are in that same vein,
yes.
Right? The shots are out, but there are some turnovers where it's like, man, and they come in bunches, 2-3 in a row, where it's like, hey, doing too much, settle things down. And I think how you handle those moments is obviously going to be big. But my big concern with Russ in the playoffs is less about Russ and more just about what is Denver's lineup, because they have been given in a weird way, a gift in Aaron Gordon's injury that's now bringing him off the bench. And it's completely solved Denver's bench problems that they've never solved, by the way, for 10 years. They've never figured out a bench rotation. Now it's a 6-game sample size, but they've been +3 since Aaron Gordon returned in the non-Jokic minutes. And by the way, that includes a game they lose by 20 points with that Jokic didn't play in. So really that number is a lot higher. But that all has to do with Aaron Gordon coming off the bench. I don't know what their playoff starting and closing five is. And it's early. You could figure that out. But that's one thing that I'm just sitting here going, I'm not sure that's going to shake out the right way. What's your opinion of Aaron Gordon coming off the bench and who their best five is in a playoff setting?
I mean, I think with Aaron Gordon coming off the bench, it feels like it just makes sense for this roster, especially with
Even in the
Russ in the
playoffs?
starting five. I don't see why not, unless things aren't going well with Russ in the starting five. Then maybe you make a
Yeah,
switch and put Russ off the bench. But
right.
if you do have a lineup with Gordon and Russ in a playoff setting, that does give two guys that defenses are going to sag off of and clog the lane and try to muck up your entire offense. So if they're able to stagger those guys, to me, that's what they should continue doing, regardless of who's starting games. And as for who finishes, do you think that's probably a game by game thing for Malone, or is
Michael
that like
Malone
something they
has
want
never
steady?
been that guy. If you
I don't know.
recall, every
He
year
likes
the
it
5-man
steady.
lineup. Yeah, he loves his 5-man lineups, and they play more than
Mhm.
anybody other 5-man lineup in the NBA by like double. So he loves his like, this is who we are, and we're gonna win or lose with it. And I agree with you though. I think they need to be more malleable.
I think so too. And I mean, in terms of, do you want to talk trade ideas a
Sure.
little bit here with Denver? I mean, I also think finding a better DeAndre Jordan should
Okay.
be a priority there.
Who
I
who
think
is?
fine.
Do you have a
I mean,
name?
I'm intrigued by the idea of Valanciunas, something for Zeke Naji,
Big
something along
Val.
those lines. I mean, you're not going to play him with Jokic, but in
Yeah.
those 10-ish minutes per game, having a big who can provide size, rebounding, little bit of floor spacing. I'd rather that than the lob threat of DeAndre Jordan at his advanced age. So I think some big that can, in theory, provide more size than Najee, but also provide a little bit of spacing with being able to float out to the perimeter. And that could help mitigate some of those concerns that we're kind of touching on with some non-shooters or guys that defenses aren't going to respect in a postseason setting. But Valanciunas isn't great. Maybe there's a better name. Maybe you don't even want a center. Maybe you want Aaron Gordon small ball 5
I
in
think that's
playoffs.
it.
But yeah, that's what it is.
I think so. Like Aaron Gordon has been really good as a backup center. I mean, Yoke's going to play 40 minutes in the playoffs. And as you get deeper into it, it's going to be 42 minutes, So
Mm-hmm.
you're talking about a 6-minute window. And Aaron Gordon against just about every matchup, I don't even know if there is, maybe the Cleveland Cavaliers, if you get that far down where, all right, can he guard Jared Allen? Like, okay, now we're maybe not, maybe now he's just too short. But I just don't think there's that many matchups where that will be an issue. And Aaron Gordon's really good at backup center in the playoffs.
Mm-hmm. Yep, and super versatile. Provides a completely different look than it
Yeah.
does with Jokic. So is there anything you'd want for Denver?
Here's where I'll take this. Just because I know you and I talk, you're a believer in Calvin Booth's vision.
Mm-hmm.
You're a believer in Christian Brown, Peyton Watson, and Julian Strother as like, hey, you have to have a 2 timeline approach to some degree. You can't overdo it, but you have to have it in some degree because that's what keeps the window open for so long. Cal, everybody hated him in October and November, probably half of December. Right
Mm-hmm.
now, those three guys are playing better and better. So do you buy, well, first of all, give me the order. Christian Brown, Peyton Watson, Julian Strother, like who are you buying is going to be ready in the playoffs to take them to the finals?
Brown won. I think that's fair. He was already
Yeah.
a important key as a rookie in a postseason run.
Yep.
I mean, between Watson and Strother, it's tough because Watson, like you have the reliability on defense and the impact on
Yeah.
defense. With Strother, it's the offensive impact. Whereas with Watson, you still have some concerns about how defenses are going to respond to him. So I'll lean Strother, and then
Really?
Watson. Yeah, I'll
Okay.
lean Strother. I mean, I've been really impressed with Strother lately. I mean,
Yeah.
as long as the shot continues falling for him, and he's right now in the season shooting 38% from three. If that continues, if he's been a 40% guy this whole last month or so, ever since Denver turned their season around, that continues, well, great. So I'll lean Strother, but Brown's pretty clearly number one. But you're right, Adam. Like I despite everything with Calvin Booth, I still support the 2 timeline plan. I think having rookies, especially for a team with a roster as expensive as it is, you need to have some productive guys on rookie scale contracts.
Right.
And Brown has become that. it looks like Strother could be becoming that, and same with Peyton Watson as a defender, at least with some flashes on offense. So to me, I think it's worth the investment for Denver to continue with that. But I also understand if, flipping Najee's salary, because Najee's the one guy that hasn't worked out, and that
Right.
re-signing does look like a mistake. But if you are to able to move him, to me, that's perhaps the direction that you go for some more reliability with the lineup, because Denver, I think, still could use another shooter as well. But
Yep.
I don't
I
think there's a
agree.
move to have a perfect roster by any means,
Right.
especially with their lack of assets.
Yeah, I see. That's the part I agree with. To me, the move you has to move. Julian Strother's the one that I'm just not sure. If you get into a playoff series, they're going to know, hey, when he's on the court, we have to attack. And there's ways you can put him. His defense, his reaction speed is still, in my opinion, below what you can get away with in the playoffs. Maybe he improves in the next 2 months. So if not him, do you replace him? You let him play out the season, but then you replace him in the postseason with like a Justin Holiday, who is just a lower mistake player. It's not like he's going to be a
Yep.
shutdown guy, but he's probably not going to make the mistakes. Maybe that's the move Denver makes, but those are achievable moves. Like Justin Holiday's just sitting there. He could be had. So I think Denver should shore up their rotation so that if Strother's getting cooked in a playoff game, you say, all right, this isn't a series for you, to the bench.
Is there any possibility we're going to see Malone go back to Tyson and Pickett for, a couple games here and there, get him 15, 20 minutes? Because there's been flashes. There's been moments.
Well, I'm
Moments.
Jalen Pickett's my guy. I love weird players. I love guys that have a weird game to them, and I love passers. And he has the weirdest game. So I absolutely love him. But no, that's like only if there's injuries are those guys getting a shot at it, unfortunately. We're
I
gonna
mean,
wrap up.
sorry. I was just saying, college Pickett was a back to the basket point guard.
He's the best, man. Do you like him?
He's so cool.
He's like, it's so weird.
I
He
love
plays
him.
the weirdest brand.
I know, he's so fun.
Yeah, I love his game, man. Somebody take a chance on Pickett. I want to be right about him, but he's not going to get a chance in Denver. Let's move on to MVP, though. We're going to wrap up by talking about MVP. And, I'm never a guy that loves the MVP conversation just because I don't love how people talk about it. I think it gets really annoying. I think this year's MVP race is a very interesting one, though. Because we have it in our heads that there is a mold of type of player that is more important or more dominant than the other, and it can go back and forth based on what era we're in. Shea to me is a very Kobe-like player, very Kobe-like, just dominant scorer and a guy you're comfortable running your offense through, mostly because he can score on anyone, and it's almost simple in how he goes about his business. Jokic is a LeBron type player. He does everything. And I think we right now in this moment in time value that more than anything else, the doing everything. But I think both guys are having all-time great seasons. And I also factor in, I do think winning matters to some extent. So what is your criteria, and how much do you think style matters? And how much do you think just the raw team record matters? Even if these guys finish 1-2 in the Western standings, but OKC is 9 games or 10 games ahead of Denver.
I mean, personally, like, style doesn't matter. I like all those different types of players, like the Kobe construct, the LeBron
Yeah.
construct, and the Jokic construct. Jokic is his own entity.
Yeah.
So I like it all. Jokic, I'll probably favor in terms of style because I love passers. I love playmakers. I've always loved those
Me too.
guys who can move the ball. So Jokic is always going to be a personal favorite for the rest of my life watching basketball. In terms of record, I do think that's a factor. I mean, you have OKC on a 67 win pace, Denver on a 52 win pace right now. So if Denver can close that gap from, OKC having nearly 70 wins to to Denver just being over 50, then perhaps like that discussion about the massive win difference that OKC has with SGA being their best player, with them being by far, significantly better with him on the floor and being not so great when he's off the floor, and a team that's dealt with injuries, that story aspect, the overall winning impact aspect, the differential that SGA has now, it becomes a lot weaker of an argument if Denver keeps winning games. And I mentioned
Right.
earlier, they have the second best net rating since December 8th in the NBA. They've been a hell of a lot better, rising up the standings. If they become pretty clearly the 2 seed in the Western Conference, and if Denver finishes with 56 wins, and if
Yeah.
OKC finishes with 63, is 7 games going to be a big difference in terms of the vote where when Jokic is putting up the better stats. He just is. Like flat out, he's putting up the better numbers. To me, at that point, I'll probably lean Jokic if that's what it ends up. And I might lean Jokic anyway, because this is all-time level stuff. It's one of the greatest seasons in the history of basketball. And so you're putting that against SGA, who's the best player on right now, the best team, having an unbelievable season as well. But I might end up favoring Jokic in the end, regardless of the record aspect. We'll see how it shakes out. It's very, very close right now, in my opinion.
I just give a lot of props to what Shea's doing because I think it's very impressive. And, people thought this of Jokic in his first MVP season. Remember Nick Wright famously like, are we really going to say he's the MVP? Like, you go back, is he the worst player to have ever won it? That obviously looks ridiculous now, as it looked ridiculous at that time to anybody paying attention. And I love Nick Wright. There's no shot at Nick Wright. I actually think he's really good at what he does. But I look at Shea the same way, where there's this sense of 5-6 years from now, we might be, of course, Shea won an MVP. He's like been one of the 3 best players in the league for 5-6 years now. At some point we'll say that. And so I think it'll feel a little bit different in the future. But here's why I think Jokic has an argument for having the greatest season ever. I know that sounds crazy. The advanced numbers are saying clearly that it is PER, box plus minus, but throw those out. A 30-point triple-double while shooting 48% from 3. He does everything, KOC. Like, on the court, his numbers are just, he's never hunting anything. He just plays the game. And the game so happens to be that he's at the center of everything, so he receives a lot of the passes coming off of the action. But he makes the right play every single time, and he's capable of making the right play. It's not, oh, I knew I was supposed to shoot here. Well, he's shooting phenomenally. Oh, I got it under the rim. I have to do his touch on jumpers and drop it off, kick to the corner. It's just whatever he does is the right decision. And he does it for 40 minutes a night. And the result of those 40 minutes a night are 30-point triple-double. And it's like as simple as that. I think he honestly, if you go through LeBron's greatest regular season, Michael Jordan's greatest regular season, this is his greatest regular season. And I will put it right alongside any of those. Don't think there's any loss compared to those guys to this year that Jokic is having. That's my case.
And he's only 29 years old right now. Turns 30 next month. He's still young. He's still young.
He'll still be growing.
Who knows how great he could become when this is his best season ever. He continues getting better every single season. There could be more MVPs to come, even if he doesn't win this year. Even if he doesn't.
I agree.
He's still like a favorite for the next 2, 3, 4 years, assuming good health. And, fingers crossed with him, he continues being as insanely durable as he's been.
Well, I know in 2023, he doesn't win it and B gets it. And a lot of people thought, well, now he'll never win another one. But then they won the title. And when you win the title, you almost default to the top of the list again. Like, okay, now we can give him more. We don't worry about voter fatigue because now he did it. And I just think it's the same thing. If he wins another title, he's going to enter the next couple seasons as the favorite to win the MVP because he's that good. And the only thing people worry about are voter fatigue or like if his team's really going to win it. If you can win it, people no longer ask that part of it. And then you're right back on the docket. But speaking of which, we're going to have some fun to get at it. Oh, did you have one last point?
I last thing I'd add is I think the odds right now, like if you look at, FanDuel right now, or even some of like the Poly market, like obviously people see that for like political odds and whatnot. I think it's too heavy on SGA right now.
Really?
I think Jokic is like a pretty solid bet right now because it's like he's at his low. Like Poly Market had him like at 19%. They sent out a post last night. It's like 19% chance of winning MVP. Jokic, the season he's having, it's just I just feel like it's way too low right now for Jokic. And same thing in the FanDuel odds at this time. I think it should be closer to even between SGA and Jokic. I agree. I don't know. I closer to even or exactly even between those two right now, in my opinion. Plus 340 on FanDuel for Jokic. Whew.
Yeah. Let's just see what happens, man. Yeah. Let's see. It's all narrative based, man. And I know Denver was like a 6 seed not long ago, but you look at it and go, hey, man, I think it should be 50-52. And let's just see how the season plays out. Because right now we're seeing something special. But speaking of which, I thought we'd end the show today by having a little fun. And we're going to snake draft future MVPs. So this is trying to project forward who's going to win the MVP. And we're going to have to do 5 of them a piece. I think the first top 4 or so are kind of easy, but once you get past that, it's going to get really tough. And here's how it works. we'll never know who wins this because we'll have to circle back in 15 years or something. But if you take, say, Victor Wembanyama and he goes on to get 6 MVPs, that counts as 6. So like the top of this, it's not who is going to win one, it's who's going to win the most going forward, starting with this very year. Since you're my guest, I'll let you have the very first pick on this, KOC, but who would be your first pick for future MVPs?
Victor Wembanyama. That's the easiest number one pick. Wemby.
How many? So he's like, what do you think is the even mark for him in future MVPs?
I think 5.
Not that many people have won 5 MVPs.
No, not many have. Not many have been anything close to what he will be.
Voter fatigue, championship. There's all that stuff that goes in. I think the thing with Wemby, and I know you feel this way as well, Defensive Player of the Year is the one that I feel like that award might go away at some point because there's really no point. Honestly, like he's going to win the next 12. Just go ahead and lock that up because if we're just talking about value defensively, you could be a great perimeter defender. You're not making guys are afraid to dribble inside the 3-point line when he's on the court.
Maybe, I mean, the DPOY, I agree. Like it's going to be him for many, many years to come. Offensively, the pushback against what I just said with 5 or 4 or 5 for him is a lot of that's going to be also dependent on what the Spurs become. How successful are they in building around Victor? And also, how do they allow him to perform? Like that game he had against the Pacers we talked about earlier in Paris, we saw the playmaking ability. Are they going to allow him to playmake? Are they going to put the ball in his hands, or are they going to find another Chris Paul once Chris Paul's gone? Because I like the Chris Paul, fit. It's helped Wemby and all that. But I hope that's not the long-term vision. I hope the long-term vision is let Wemby explore the Jokic within. He's not Jokic as a passer, but let him be the best version of himself as a DHO guy, as a guy who's bringing the ball up the floor and facilitating offense and having Castle screen for him. Those are the types of things that I think are really going to allow Victor to reach his true potential offensively and not just being some finisher as a pick and pop guy and as a lob threat with Chris Paul in the offense.
Yeah. I think it's the safest pick. He's going to probably 5. I don't know about 5 though, but it's almost like the floor of him winning MVP. I would be shocked if he didn't get at least 2 of them. And there's a chance he gets.
Oh, floor. I misheard a floor. Oh, we'll go floor 3. Floor 5 would be absurd.
No. I said the line. No, okay. I said the line 5.
Okay, the line.
You got it right.
Okay, okay. Oh, yeah. I think that's fair. Then I'll keep that answer.
Man, this puts me in a tight spot because I feel like number 1 was the easiest one. And by the way, we are counting this year. I'm going to be a total homer. I'm going to take Nikola Jokic. And I'm glad you said what you said earlier, which is I think there's this sense of if he doesn't win this year, it's over. I don't think that's true. I think he's in the MVP conversation for the next 5 years. And like I said, if Denver just wins a championship, he's almost a lock to win it the following year because you don't feel bad when you're saying, hey, he's a reigning champ and the best player in the world. Yes, he's MVP. So I'm going to take Jokic because I think he has at least one more MVP in him. It might be this year, but if not, I still think he's going to be in the running for years to come. So he gets my second pick or my first pick.
I like it. I would have selected him next. I wish you didn't pick him.
There you go. All right. Who would you take next?
I'll go with Giannis.
With Giannis. Really?
Little risky here because SGA could win this year's. But if you're looking ahead, I still think there's a chance it comes back to Giannis at some point. If Milwaukee if they get better, then he'll be one of the best players in the league on one of the best teams in the league. If they continue better, and if things implode with the Bucks, maybe he gets traded to a situation in which he's in a championship contending situation once again, and he's putting up still all-time great stats. Because Giannis this year, everything we said about Jokic earlier is the main engine behind Denver's turnaround. Giannis is the main reason behind Milwaukee's turnaround. He's still, in my opinion, number 3 in MVP rankings. He's just behind SGA and behind Jokic. So I'll lean Giannis because of that elite 2-way ability right now.
Then I'll do the easy one and take Shea. Obviously has a great chance of winning it this year. And again, just like we said earlier, I think he'll be in the running for a while. So I'll go with Shea on as my next one, and I think he gets at least one throughout the course of his career. Also, Oklahoma City is set up to be great for a long time, so he'll be
Yes.
relevant for a long time. He'll be in that conversation a lot. I'll go with Shea. All right, now it gets a little hard. Where will you
Luka.
go? Yeah,
I'll go Luka. I think Luka
actually,
gets at least one. At least one.
this is the best value pick we just had on the board. I actually think we were too low on him. I think he gets at least one as well. This calf thing is a little concerning. The teams haven't had great regular seasons in his era, and I think that's part of it, right? Being a top 3 seed makes this a lot easier. But I think that's a good one. After that is tough. I don't know that any of the next guys are going to get an MVP. This is where it gets really tough. But I will take Tatum just by virtue of the fact that he's on the Celtics team. He is a really good player. He's on that Celtics team that looks like it's set up to succeed for a long time. He's already been in the conversation. I don't think he'll win one, but I could see the Celtics going back to back. And then next year it's like, come on, guys. Like, we overvalue the team wins almost next year.
I think the Celtics almost have to get slightly worse for Tatum's like volume to go even up further. And like his volume's high, to be clear, but for those numbers to go to balloon up even more. I'm going to go with a guy that's not even in the NBA, AJ Debonsa, going to BYU. Yeah, AJ Debonsa going to BYU next year. 6'9", two-way guy. He defends with like the intensity of Kevin Garnett as a big wing. He's just nonstop motor, rebounds, switchable, and then offensively looks like T-Mac out there. He's a scorer first, but he's also a willing playmaker too. Debonsa, like I think if you're betting on somebody to win MVP, like in this exercise, it needs to be somebody who's a two-way guy. And that's why I'm even hesitant with Luka. Like Luka might go down as one of the best players to never win MVP. It's possible that he just happens to enter the NBA and he might have missed his chance with this wave of players. So I'll take Debonsa as my next selection, even though he's not even in the NBA yet. And maybe that ends up looking like a silly choice if things don't pan out at BYU. But I believe they will. I'm a big believer in him.
Yeah. I thought you would go with a different college player because this is where you get into the point where you're like, these are great players, even Tatum, great players, but MVP, I don't know. As I go through the list, maybe Wemby does win 5 just because we're going through the competition here. I'll take Anthony Edwards. And look, I'm making pick at a low. I think a year ago, people would have been like, yeah, that sounds great. He's going to win a couple. Right now, it's looking a little rough. He is a really great player. I think the team offensively makes things hard on him, and I can envision a world where he is on a team that just fits who he is perfectly, and he looks absolutely incredible. Leads league in scoring by a comfortable margin. It's not going to happen anytime soon, I don't think, in Minnesota, but he is a great player. He's young enough. I'll take Anthony Edwards. I think he's probably more of like if he gets an MVP, it's a one MVP guy. But I'll go with Ant. All right, you have one more pick.
I think that's spot on about Ant, like a one MVP guy. And I think any of the remaining guys are probably in that same category. Man, I'll go with Cooper Flag. I'll just do it. I'll go with Cooper Flag.
Young guys.
I'll go with Cooper. I mean, because with him, what we've seen this last month with Duke, basically ever since he turned 18 years old, the shot is falling. Spot up threes, turnaround mid-range jumpers, and that is unleashing some of the playmaking stuff for him as well. So we know we're going to have an elite defender in Cooper Flag. That's his floor, is elite defender who can be a jack of all trades on offense. But if the shot is falling, like there's moments where I'm like, is he Kawhi Leonard? Like, is that what he is? So that's a bet on what the offensive upside could be. But in all likelihood, he's more of just all-star, all-NBA level. But I'll take Cooper as a roll of the dice with that offense developing.
There are great players that are just nowhere close to MVP. Like Anthony Davis at his peak, absolutely awesome, but it's like not an MVP type of guy. So it is almost mold. And that would be my only – I haven't watched a lot of Cooper Flag, but I kind of know what the mold of player is. And it isn't always the most like MVP mold, but we'll see. Like you said, we'll see if he's hitting that jumper. I'm going to round it out. Again, I'm not buying this, but I was trying to decide NBA players for me because I knew I kind of thought you'd take Flag. I didn't know about Debonsa. I'm going to have to check him out. But I'll go with Cade Cunningham. Again,
Oh, I had him on my list, Adam.
Did you?
I like it.
I don't think he's winning MVP, but they are on a very robust team right now, and he's playing well. What does it look like when you optimize that lineup around him? What does it look like a couple years from now when he's really figured out the game, added even strength, a little bit more shooting? I think he's possible. Again, I'm not picking it, but there's a small chance I could see him rising to the level where he's an MVP, especially if he's in a Shea situation where it's like, hey, you're on a great team now that optimizes your strengths, and you're the engine of what this great team does. I could see it happening.
I think Cade's a good pick for that same reason, Adam, because great season, also a two-way player too. He's a good defensive player. He's having his best defensive season with the Pistons, and maybe he continues getting better over the course of time. So I wouldn't bet that he wins an MVP, but 7 years from now, who knows what the state of the league is going to look like at that point, and maybe he could.
Let's get out of here real quickly by just looking at the weekend slate as we always do on the weekend. A look ahead. This is presented by FanDuel. Remember, you can get started with 150 in bonus bets when you use that promo code AllNBA. Here's my weekend slate. It's a very abnormal one. Terrible games on Friday. Terrible games on Sunday. There's nothing, man. But they gave us a phenomenal Saturday. So I'm telling everybody watch the show. Don't watch the NBA on Friday or Saturday. Take that time off. Go do something else. Plan your Saturday around the NBA, though, because look at this. Pacers Spurs is a great one. Nuggets Wolves rivalry game is a great one. Rockets Cavs, the rematch from last week. Kings at Knicks. Kings have been on a run, but they just got smacked by Denver. What happens if they go to the Garden? And then Bucks Clippers. Oh, boy, is that one incredible. Bucks on a huge run. Clippers were on a run, have rested their guys and taken a couple L's, but I think the Clippers are starting to ascend as well. What stands out to you of those 5 games?
Friday night, Pelicans without Zion at Grizzlies.
You had to look it up. Boy, I wasn't wrong, was I? It's horrible.
I did look it up. Boy, and only one game Sunday, Thunder at Blazers at 6 p.m. Obviously, NBA avoiding the NFL playoffs there, the conference championships. I like that Bucks-Clippers game at night. That's a good one because the Clippers are really feisty, man. Really fun, even without Kawhi Leonard. And then with Kawhi, there's something different. So I think that Bucks-Clippers game stands out the most to me. And I think LeBron, Steph, even though it's not the best game necessarily, those two guys are both legends, and seeing them go against each other, it's still fun, man. It's one of the games.
It is.
I can have multiple games on at once. I'll have an eye on that one at least.
I didn't put it on there, but you are right. Those two always give us a show, even if I'm out on the Warriors. All right, cue that outro music, James. Cue that outro music. What do we have? We have one super chat here.
Yes, sir. One super chat for you.
What do we got? Psycho Blue. He super chats every day. KOC $10. He says B-Ball Cthulhu wonders if anyone still asks Stan Kroenke about the infamous Ennis skit from Raw during the last days of the Carmelo era. Does anybody know? This is such a niche reference. The Nuggets in the Carmelo era, they go to the conference finals, but the Nuggets had booked Ball Arena or Pepsi Center at the time for WWE. So they had to cancel, I don't know whatever it is, they had to cancel the big wrestling event. And Vince McMahon just went on SportsCenter and ripped him nonstop for 10 minutes. It's actually an incredible roast. So that was a very niche reference there from our super chatter. KOC, thank you so much, man, for joining me today. Going a little bit long. Guys, check him out. Read him at Yahoo. He's one of the best in the game, man. Read him at Yahoo. The Kevin O'Connor show is always great. Great guests, great insight. And I'm not just saying that because I made an appearance on there one time. Kevin, thanks so much for doing this, man. I appreciate you.
Thank you, Adam. Love what you guys are doing here with All NBA. You and Legs are awesome. One of the best NBA pods going right now. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks so much. Everybody, enjoy your weekend. Stay away from basketball tonight. Rejoin it on Saturday. We'll see you on the other side.
We all silly like the mayor.